The girl loved music. She loved it more than anything else in her small world. When she was alone in her room, she would hum quietly, tapping her fingers on the desk, imagining the notes flowing from her fingertips. But there was something special she longed to try, playing the piano. It was not just an ordinary piano. It was an old polished instrument in the corner of the school music room, its surface reflecting light like a mirror. It was beautiful, and to her it seemed alive, waiting for someone to wake it with music. She had seen other children in her school play before. They would sit confidently, their fingers moving over the keys as if they were part of the piano itself. But whenever she tried to imagine herself doing the same, she felt a mix of excitement and fear. She was small, shy, and usually kept to herself. The thought of sitting in front of that piano while everyone watched made her stomach twist with nervousness. What if she made a mistake? What if they laughed at her? But her curiosity was stronger than her fear. Every day during break, she would peek into the music room, watching the piano from a distance. The other children would play, and sometimes they would be loud, laughing and joking with each other. She would pretend to walk past, pretending not to notice, but her eyes always returned to the piano. She imagined herself sitting there, pressing the keys and hearing the beautiful sounds that had been living in her mind for so long. Every note seemed to promise something magical, something only she could feel. One afternoon, the school was quieter than usual. Most of the students were outside, running and playing, leaving the hallways empty. She knew this was her chance. She took a deep breath, feeling her heart beat fast, and stepped inside the music room. The piano sat there, waiting. She walked closer, her fingers twitching, feeling a strange mixture of excitement and fear. She could feel the cold wood of the piano keys under her hands before she even touched them. Just as she was about to sit down, a group of children from her class appeared in the doorway. They were curious, maybe a little mean, and they immediately noticed her. One of them laughed quietly, making a small comment about how she would probably ruin the piano if she tried to play. Another whispered to the first, smirking, and they all looked at her with amusement. Her stomach sank, but she forced herself to stay calm. She wanted to turn around, to run away and hide in the safety of the playground, but something inside her said, "No, not today. Today you try." She sat down on the piano bench, her legs swinging slightly because they barely reached the floor. She placed her fingers on the keys, soft and hesitant. She remembered what she had imagined in her mind so many times. She pressed one key. The sound was soft and a little shaky, but it was music. Then another key, then another. Slowly, she began to form a small melody, simple and quiet, but it was hers. She could feel the music spreading through her chest, filling her with warmth. The children in the doorway watched her, expecting something funny or awkward. But as she continued, something unexpected happened. Her fingers moved more confidently. The notes she had only imagined before were now real, dancing in the air around her. Her music was simple, but it was beautiful, full of emotion that words could never capture. The hall was quiet except for the sound of the piano, and for a moment she felt like the world had disappeared. It was just her and the music. A few of the children who were watching leaned closer, curious now instead of mocking. One of them whispered, "She's actually good." The others looked at each other, surprised, their laughter forgotten. They had expected a mistake, a wrong note, something to laugh at. But instead they were hearing something that caught them by surprise. Her playing was soft and delicate at first, then a little stronger, a little bolder, as if the music itself was giving her courage. She didn't notice them staring. She didn't notice her hands moving faster, more confidently as the melody grew. Her heart was racing, but it was no longer from fear. It was excitement. She could feel the music inside her, pouring out through her fingers. The piano was alive beneath her hands, and she was part of it. The sounds she had only dreamed of were now real, filling the room with something magical and unexpected. She remembered the quiet moments at home, when she had practiced humming along with songs she loved. All those small private times had led to this moment. Each note was a tiny victory over her fear, each chord a declaration that she would not let anyone's laughter stop her. She realized that the mockery, the whispers, the doubtful looks, they didn't matter. The music mattered, and for the first time she felt free. The children in the doorway were no longer sneering. They were leaning forward, trying to take in every note. Even the ones who had whispered jokes earlier couldn't help but be drawn in. There was something in her playing that reached them, something pure and honest. They had never seen her like this before. never noticed the quiet determination that had been hiding behind her shy eyes. Now in this small music room, she was shining. Her hands moved with more ease now, as if they had always known the way across the keys. She wasn't thinking about the mistakes she might make. She was only thinking about the music, letting it flow from her heart. The melody was simple, but it carried emotions that no words could explain. Happiness, hope, a little sadness, and a lot of courage, it was all there in the notes she played. And with each note, she felt herself becoming braver, stronger. Time seemed to stretch and bend. The sunlight from the windows cast soft patterns on the floor, and she didn't notice it. She didn't notice the clock ticking. All that existed was her and the music and the small group of children who had quietly gathered to listen. She felt the magic of the moment, the way music could transform fear into beauty, doubt into confidence, and silence into something unforgettable. When she finally stopped, the room was quiet for a heartbeat, and then a gentle clapping started. Not loud, not mocking, but sincere. One by one, the children began to clap, their expressions full of awe and surprise. She looked up, feeling a little shy now, her cheeks warm. They weren't laughing at her. They were celebrating her, recognizing the courage it had taken just to sit at the piano and try. The girl smiled softly, a little amazed herself. She realized that this small moment, the decision to touch the piano despite the fear, the bravery to play in front of others, was bigger than she had imagined. It wasn't about impressing anyone or proving herself. It was about discovering something inside her, something strong and beautiful, and letting it shine. The laughter and mockery that had seemed so loud and terrifying moments ago were gone, replaced by something far more powerful: respect, wonder, and the first taste of her own potential. As she walked away from the piano that day, she felt a quiet pride. She knew it wouldn't be the last time she would face fear, or the last time she would hear people doubt her. But she also knew that music, her music, could carry her through anything. And from that moment, she carried the memory of the first time she dared to touch the piano, the first time she let her courage and her heart guide her fingers. It was a small beginning, but it felt like the start of something endless and wonderful. The day after her first brave attempt at the piano, the girl woke up with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The memory of the music she had played lingered in her mind, like a sweet echo she couldn't shake. Every step to school felt heavier and lighter at the same time. Heavier because she knew some of her classmates would talk about her, and lighter because she also knew she had done something brave, something real. When she entered the school, she noticed the whispers and glances almost immediately. Some children pointed quietly, trying to catch the attention of others. Some were curious, some amused, and some seemed to be thinking differently. She felt the old familiar knot of fear in her stomach, but she remembered the piano, the sound of the notes, and the warmth that had filled her chest. She drew in a deep breath, trying to carry that feeling with her through the hallway. During the first break, she went to the music room again. The door was slightly open, and she could hear someone else playing a simple tune. She paused, listening. The sound was different from hers, mechanical and careless. She felt a little pang of pride. Her music had been different. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. Her hands shook slightly as she approached the piano, remembering the way the keys had felt under her fingers, the way the notes had come alive. As she sat down, she noticed some of the same children from yesterday lingering in the hallway. This time their expressions were different. One of them, who had laughed the most, now seemed hesitant, unsure. Another simply watched, quietly observing. She could feel the tension in the room, the mix of fear and expectation, but she tried to block it out. This was her moment again, her chance to connect with the piano and with herself. She pressed the first key. The note sounded soft and clear, like a small bell ringing in the quiet hall. She let herself breathe, letting her fingers find the rhythm naturally. With each note, she felt more confident, more in control. The melody she played was different from yesterday, more flowing, more delicate. She added a small flourish here, a gentle pause there, and suddenly the music seemed to tell a story. Her story. It was a story of fear and courage, of quiet determination that no one had noticed before. The children in the doorway started to move closer, drawn by the music. They did not speak, not even a whisper, because the notes seemed to capture their attention in a way nothing else could. Some of them exchanged glances, their previous mockery replaced by curiosity. They had not expected this, and it made them stop and think. The girl didn't look at them, she didn't need to. She was absorbed in the piano, in the story she was telling with every note. Her heart was full of emotion, and that emotion flowed freely into the music. She remembered the afternoons she had spent alone at home, pretending a small keyboard was a grand piano. She remembered the feeling of her imagination guiding her hands, telling her where to go next. Those quiet moments had prepared her for this. She realized that music was more than notes on a page or keys under her fingers. It was a way to speak when words failed, a way to be understood without saying a single thing. The melody grew stronger. She began to feel a rhythm in her chest that matched the music, a steady pulse that gave her courage. She let her hands move freely, experimenting with chords she had never tried before. Some notes stumbled, some harmonies were unexpected, but she embraced them. Each sound was part of the story, and mistakes were not failures. They were part of the expression. Her fingers danced across the keys, sometimes delicate, sometimes bold, carrying her feelings into the air around her. The children now watched in silence, completely caught in the magic of the moment. Even those who had mocked her yesterday were quiet, their laughter gone. They could not deny what they were hearing. The girl was not just playing the piano, she was speaking through it. She was telling a story that only she knew, but everyone could feel. Her music had a life of its own, and for the first time, she realized how powerful that could be. She paused for a moment, letting her hands rest on the keys. She noticed a small smile on one of the children's faces, and another who seemed a little ashamed of having laughed before. She felt a sense of connection, a tiny bond forming through the shared experience of music. She understood that courage was not about being loud or boastful. It was about showing who you are even when it is difficult. The piano had given her a voice, and she was learning to use it. When she began again, she played with even more confidence. The notes were clearer, the rhythm more certain. She experimented with new sequences, blending gentle tones with stronger ones, creating a dance of sound that filled the room. She could feel the excitement building inside her, a joy that was different from anything she had experienced before. It was a pure, simple happiness, the kind that comes when you do something that truly matters to you. She noticed a teacher entering the room quietly, drawn by the sound. The teacher smiled softly, nodding, not interrupting. It felt comforting to have someone recognize her effort without words, without pressure. The girl's fingers moved faster now, more confidently, her movements almost instinctive. She felt herself growing, not just in skill but in courage and in heart. She realized that playing the piano was no longer just a dream. It was a part of who she was. As she reached the final notes, she slowed her hands deliberately, letting the music linger in the air. The last note faded gently, leaving a silence that felt full, complete. The children who had watched were now clapping softly, their eyes wide with awe. The teacher approached and gave a small nod of encouragement. The girl felt a rush of pride and relief. She had faced the fear, played again, and found that the magic was real, that the music had truly come alive. She stood up from the piano, her hands tingling, her heart still racing with excitement. She noticed the way some children were looking at her differently now, not as someone to mock, but as someone with a talent, a courage, and a story worth noticing. She smiled quietly to herself, feeling a sense of accomplishment that went beyond applause. It was the knowledge that she had faced her fear, trusted herself, and created something beautiful. Walking back to class, she felt lighter, stronger, and more certain of who she was. The day seemed brighter, the hallways more welcoming. She knew that there would be challenges ahead, that not everyone would understand or appreciate her music immediately, but she also knew that she had discovered something precious, something that could never be taken away. Her piano playing was no longer just a dream. It was a living part of her world, a voice she could carry forward with courage and joy. And in that moment, she realized that courage was not about never being afraid. It was about touching the piano, pressing the keys, and letting the music flow even when others doubted her. It was about daring to show the world who she truly was, one note at a time. The girl had begun a journey that would change her life, and this was only the beginning. Over the next few days, the girl found herself thinking about the piano constantly. She would hum melodies in the quiet moments at home, and imagined new sequences of notes that she wanted to try. The memory of the music room and the way the piano had felt beneath her fingers stayed with her, like a secret treasure she carried inside. She knew that she wanted to play again, to explore the sounds she had only begun to understand. At school, things began to change slowly. The children who had laughed and whispered before seemed to treat her differently. Some approached her quietly, curious about the music she had played. One or two asked if they could hear her play again, though they did so shyly. She noticed the surprise in their eyes as they realized she had something special, a talent that could not be ignored. It was a strange feeling for her, to be noticed not for mischief or humor, but for skill and courage. One afternoon, she decided to go to the music room during lunch break. The hallways were mostly empty, and the quiet was comforting. She opened the door slowly, almost reverently, and approached the piano. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear this time, but from anticipation. She pressed the first key, letting the sound fill the room. The note was soft, clear, and reassuring. She closed her eyes for a moment, remembering the melodies that had lived in her mind, and then began to play. The music she created this time was richer, more layered. She experimented with rhythms and harmonies, trying sequences she had only imagined before. Each chord seemed to tell a story, her story, in a way that words never could. She felt herself becoming a part of the piano, the instrument no longer an object, but a partner in her expression. She was speaking through the notes, letting her feelings, her hopes, and her courage flow freely. As she played, a small group of students gathered outside the doorway. They had heard about her talent and were curious to see her in action again. This time there were no whispers, no smirks. They simply watched, captivated by the beauty of her music. Some of them had never realized how a simple melody could hold so much emotion. They leaned closer, listening carefully, their expressions softening with appreciation and wonder. The girl felt the power of the music growing within her. She played with more confidence, exploring the range of the piano, letting her fingers find patterns naturally. There were moments of hesitation, small mistakes, but she embraced them. Each note, each sequence was a reflection of her courage and determination. She felt a connection, not just with the piano, but with the children who were listening, who had come to witness her expression. The music created a bond that words could not describe. She remembered the quiet afternoons at home, the moments she had spent imagining the piano beneath her hands. Those days of practice, even without a real instrument, had prepared her for this. She realized that music was not just sound. It was feeling, emotion, and bravery, all combined. Playing the piano was no longer a dream or a secret. It was a way for her to communicate, to connect, and to grow. The children outside the door began to whisper quietly to each other. "She's amazing," one said. Another nodded, a look of admiration in their eyes. They had expected a timid performance, maybe a few awkward notes, but what they were hearing was powerful, emotional, and confident. Their perception of her changed, not instantly, but subtly, as they realized that courage and talent could come in the quietest, most unexpected places. A teacher entered the room quietly, drawn by the sound of the piano. The girl did not notice at first, completely absorbed in the music. The teacher watched with a soft smile, nodding slightly, recognizing the girl's progress. She played with a freedom that had not been there before, her confidence growing with each note. It was a turning point, a moment where she began to see herself not just as a shy girl, but as someone capable of expressing herself fully and bravely. As she continued, she allowed herself to explore the emotional range of the piano. She played softer melodies, gentle and tender, then moved to stronger, more confident sequences. The hall was filled with music that carried hope, courage, and joy. She felt herself growing not just in skill, but in spirit. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a friend, a guide, and a reflection of her inner world. The children outside listened quietly, completely absorbed. They had come expecting a simple display, maybe a timid attempt, but instead they were witnessing something beautiful, alive and genuine. The girls' music seemed to touch something deep inside them, a feeling of admiration, surprise, and even inspiration. They had learned something without words, that courage could be quiet, that talent could be unexpected, and that a single person could make a room come alive with determination and heart. When she finally stopped, the silence that followed was full of meaning. The children outside clapped softly, not loudly, but with genuine appreciation. The teacher approached, offering a kind nod and a quiet word of encouragement. The girl felt a rush of pride and relief. She had faced the piano again, played with emotion and skill, and created something that could not be ignored. She had taken a step further on her journey, and it felt wonderful. Walking out of the music room, she felt a new sense of purpose. She understood that music was her voice, her way of expressing herself when words failed. She also understood that courage was not about never feeling afraid, but about choosing to act despite fear. Each time she played, she became stronger, more confident, and more certain of who she was. The piano had given her more than music. It had given her courage, expression, and a sense of belonging. In the following days, she continued to play whenever she could. She practiced quietly, exploring new melodies, refining her skill, and discovering the depths of her own talent. The children around her began to see her differently, with respect and admiration rather than mockery. Her confidence grew, and with it, her willingness to share her music. The piano had become a part of her life, a constant source of joy, challenge, and inspiration. Through these moments, she learned a valuable lesson: that talent and courage can emerge in the quietest, most unexpected places. She realized that it was not the applause or recognition that mattered most, but the connection she felt with her music, and the bravery she discovered within herself. Each note she played was a step forward, a statement of who she was, and a promise of the path she would continue to follow. The girl's confidence continued to grow, and with it, her love for the piano became stronger. She found herself waking up earlier, thinking about melodies, imagining new ways to play songs she loved. The music room became her sanctuary, a place where she could be herself and let her emotions flow freely through her fingers. Each note she played was a reflection of her courage, her dreams, and her determination. One afternoon, the school announced a small music event, a chance for students to showcase their talents. The girl's heart skipped a beat when she heard about it. The thought of performing in front of a larger audience made her nervous, yet something inside her whispered that this was the moment to step further. She had faced mockery, hesitation, and fear before. Now she knew that she could try again, and that her music could speak for her. She practiced every day, experimenting with melodies and chords, making small adjustments to the pieces she had played before. Her fingers moved more confidently now, almost instinctively across the keys. She began to understand how each note could change the feeling of the music, how rhythm and tempo could express emotion. Music was no longer just a sequence of sounds. It was a story she could tell without words. As the day of the event approached, she noticed a mix of excitement and anxiety building within her. Some children in her class whispered about her performance, some curious, some doubtful. She remembered the laughter from the past, the sneers that had once made her hesitate. But she also remembered the music, the way it had carried her through fear and given her confidence. She drew a deep breath and reminded herself that this was not about impressing anyone. It was about sharing a part of herself. On the day of the event, the auditorium was filled with students, teachers, and parents. The girl waited backstage, her heart beating rapidly, her fingers tingling. She could hear other students performing, some singing, some playing instruments, their confidence varying. She felt a wave of nervousness but tried to focus on the piano and the music she wanted to create. It was her time, her chance to express everything she had learned and felt. When it was her turn, she walked slowly to the stage. The lights shone brightly and the audience fell silent. She felt a flicker of fear, but then she remembered the music room, the empty hallways, the quiet moments at home, and the first time she had touched the piano. She sat down, placed her fingers on the keys, and pressed the first note. The sound was clear and pure, filling the auditorium. As she continued, the music grew, stronger and more expressive. She let her emotions guide her fingers, weaving a story through melody and rhythm. The audience listened, captivated by the sincerity and beauty of her playing. She did not play to impress them, but they could feel the honesty in her performance. Each note carried her courage, Each chord her passion, each pause her reflection. She could see the faces of the children who had once mocked her. Their expressions were different now, a mixture of awe and admiration. Even the teachers seemed surprised at the depth of feeling in her music. The girl felt a strange sense of calm, as if the piano had given her strength and the confidence to let her true self be seen. She played without hesitation, allowing the music to guide her. The melody shifted, moving from soft, gentle notes to stronger, bolder sequences. She added small variations, improvising slightly, letting the music breathe and flow naturally. The audience was silent, completely absorbed. It was a moment of connection, where the boundaries between performer and listener faded and the music became a shared experience. She felt herself smiling slightly, her nerves replaced by the joy of expression. As the final notes lingered, she held them, letting the sound resonate through the room. Then she gently released the keys, allowing the silence to settle. For a moment there was stillness, as if the auditorium itself was catching its breath, and then the applause began. It was warm, heartfelt, and steady. The girl felt her cheeks flush with pride and relief. She had done it. She had faced the fear, played with her heart, and created something beautiful that touched others. The children who had doubted her before approached after the performance. Their faces were bright with admiration, some shyly complimenting her, others nodding with respect. She smiled softly, feeling a sense of connection she had never experienced before. She realized that courage and talent could inspire others, and that sharing her music could create bonds that words could not. The teacher who had encouraged her quietly before the performance came forward, praising her dedication and skill. The girl felt a deep sense of validation, not because of the praise itself, but because it confirmed what she had already discovered, that her courage and perseverance had led her to something meaningful. The piano was more than an instrument. It was a companion that had helped her grow, learn, and express herself. In the following days, the girl noticed a subtle change in the way others treated her. She was no longer just the quiet student who dared to touch the piano. She was the girl whose music could move hearts, whose courage could inspire. Some children asked her to play with them or share tips on melodies, and she welcomed them, happy to see others finding joy in music. She felt proud not only of her skill, but also of the way her bravery had created a small ripple of admiration and connection. She continued to practice every day, always exploring new pieces and experimenting with melodies. She understood that mastery was a journey, not a destination, and she embraced the challenge. The piano had become a part of her identity, a source of confidence and a means to express her emotions freely. She knew that each performance, whether in front of a large audience or alone in the music room, was an opportunity to grow, to connect, and to discover herself. The girl realized that her journey with music was also a journey with courage. Each time she played, she faced her fears, overcame doubt, and embraced the unknown. The applause, admiration, and recognition were wonderful, but they were not the most important part. What mattered most was the feeling of connection, the joy of creation, and the knowledge that she could trust herself and her abilities. Through the music, she discovered a sense of purpose and a way to express her inner world. She understood that courage and talent often emerged in quiet, unexpected places, and that the simplest acts of bravery could have a profound impact. The girl had begun a transformation, one that would shape her future, her self-esteem, and her approach to challenges. The piano had been her guide, her partner, and her teacher, and she carried its lessons with her in every note she played. As the days turned into weeks, the girl continued to grow, both in skill and in confidence. She shared her music with others whenever she could, inspiring curiosity and admiration. She embraced each opportunity to perform, whether for friends, teachers, or at school events. Her journey was far from over, but she knew that the foundation of courage, perseverance, and passion she had built would support her in every step ahead. The music had given her a voice, and she was determined to use it fully, bravely, and beautifully. After her first performance in the school auditorium, the girl felt a sense of calm and happiness that she had never experienced before. The applause, the admiration, and the kind words were wonderful, but what stayed with her most was the feeling of connection she had created through her music. She realized that the piano had become more than just an instrument. It had become a part of her life, a companion and a voice for the emotions she sometimes could not express in words. She continued to practice daily, exploring new pieces, creating melodies of her own and refining the ones she had played before. Each time she sat at the piano, she felt a wave of excitement and anticipation. Her fingers moved with confidence, almost instinctively, and she could feel the music flowing naturally from her heart. Playing was no longer just a dream or a hobby. It was her way of expressing herself and connecting with the world around her. Her classmates began to approach her differently. Those who had mocked her before now watched her with respect, sometimes asking her to teach them small melodies or to play together. She welcomed them warmly, happy to share her knowledge and her love for music. It was a subtle change, but it made a big difference in how she felt at school. She realized that courage and talent could change the way others saw her, but more importantly, it changed how she saw herself. One afternoon, she was invited by the teacher to perform at a small school gathering. She felt nervous as the audience would be larger this time, including students from other classes and a few parents. But she remembered the first time she had touched the piano, the first time she had played in front of a few classmates, and all the moments she had practiced in quiet solitude. She took a deep breath and reminded herself that music was not about perfection. It was about expression and courage. As she played, she felt the music carry her. Her fingers moved gracefully across the keys, creating melodies that were rich and full of emotion. She added soft pauses, gentle flourishes, and moments of bold, confident chords. The audience listened quietly, captivated by the sincerity and beauty of her performance. She could feel the energy of the listeners, the way the music touched them, and it gave her a sense of fulfillment unlike anything she had experienced before. When she finished, the applause was warm and heartfelt. The teacher smiled proudly, and several students came forward to compliment her. She felt a rush of pride, but it was different from the first time. This time it was not just about recognition. It was about understanding the power of her own voice and the courage it had taken to share it. She realized that her journey with music had taught her lessons about perseverance, self-confidence, and the importance of staying true to herself. In the weeks that followed, she began to perform more often, both at school events and informal gatherings. She discovered that playing the piano not only brought joy to herself but also to others. People would stop to listen, some with wide smiles, some with tears in their eyes. She felt a sense of connection that transcended words. Music had become her language, a way to communicate emotions and stories that could not always be spoken. The girl also noticed that her own confidence in other areas of life was growing. She felt more comfortable speaking up in class, trying new things, and approaching challenges with determination. The piano had given her more than musical skill. It had given her courage, resilience, and a sense of identity. She learned that facing fear, even in small steps, could lead to incredible personal growth and opportunities. Her friends and classmates became her biggest supporters. They encouraged her to continue learning, to explore different styles of music, and to challenge herself with more complex pieces. She found joy in practicing together, teaching others, and sharing her passion. The shy, quiet girl who once hesitated to touch the piano had grown into someone confident, expressive, and inspiring. Her journey had transformed not only her relationship with music, but also her relationships with the people around her. One evening, after a long day of practice, she sat quietly at the piano, reflecting on how far she had come. She remembered the fear she had felt the first time she dared to touch the keys, the laughter and mockery of her classmates, and the moments of doubt that had followed. Now she realized that those experiences had been necessary steps, shaping her courage and determination. Each challenge had prepared her for the next, and each moment of bravery had strengthened her resolve. She played a gentle, flowing melody, one that carried a sense of peace and accomplishment. The notes echoed softly in the empty room, and she felt a deep connection to her own journey. The music was not just a performance. It was a reflection of her growth, her courage, and her heart. She understood that the piano had become a companion, a teacher, and a friend, guiding her through fear and doubt to a place of confidence and self-expression. The girl knew that her journey with music was far from over. There would be new challenges, more performances, and moments when she would feel nervous or uncertain. But she also knew that she had discovered a strength within herself, a voice that could not be silenced by fear or mockery. She had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. The piano had taught her this lesson, and it would continue to guide her in the future. As she closed the piano lid and stood up, she felt a sense of gratitude and joy. She had come a long way from the shy, hesitant girl who had once been afraid to touch the piano. Now she was confident, expressive, and ready to embrace new experiences. She realized that her journey was not just about music, but about life, courage, and the power of believing in oneself. With a smile on her face, she walked out of the music room, carrying the lessons of her journey in her heart. She knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she could face them with the same determination and courage that had led her to the piano. Her music had given her a voice, her courage had given her strength, and her journey had given her a sense of purpose and identity that would stay with her forever. From that day on, she continued to play, to explore, and to inspire. The piano remained her companion, her outlet, and her voice. She shared her music whenever she could, touching the hearts of those who listened and inspiring others to find their own courage. The girl had discovered that even in the face of doubt and mockery, bravery and passion could create something beautiful, something lasting, and something that would resonate far beyond the notes of a single melody.